democracy requires more than just voting. It requires collective action.
The divides in our country and the hatred and racism will only get worse if we do not act now.
This will be a time period that historians look back on as being one of those pivotal times in American history.
This kind of urgency that has never been so apparent, I think, in an election before.
You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy.
Does ban Syrian refugees from entering the U.S. indefinitely, and it also issues a 90-day ban on nearly all travelers from 7 predominantly Muslim countries.
I'm here today to announce that the program known as DACA is being rescinded.
A dangerous game of chicken as 2 nuclear-armed leaders threaten to destroy the other.
The United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord.
Article 1 is adopted. Article 2 is adopted.
There's so many people who will be so hurt by another 4 years by a president and an administration like the one we have today.
Trump has shown himself to be a terrible leader in these past 4 years.
The presidential debate was unlike any other presidential debate that I have ever seen.
We're not emulating these people who are the leaders of our country. We're going to change the story.
It was just very heartbreaking that our country has led to this.
People need decency. They need truth.
The actual physical part of voting, delivering the ballot, was very easy. The part that I find the most difficult about voting in Oakland or California in general is it's so much information. Like, there were 10, 15 props for us to research.
You have to do your own research. Is it hard? Yes, it is very hard. Like, I'm sitting up here, doing my studies and all of that stuff to pass the California bar. Is it hard? This material is very difficult.
People should be able to easily, safely, and efficiently get out of their house, go and not have to be a hassle and vote. And that's just like as simple as it should be all over the country.
We have a president who is seeming to encourage violence and encourage sort of people to sort of go to polling places and monitor. That's something that seems clearly to be something we call voter intimidation, which is illegal.
We as a country need to be encouraging as many people to vote as possible so that everybody's voice can be heard.
And it's not intuitive. It's not written so that it's easy to read and understand. It's written in ways that make you think that you're making the right choice, but there's always these sort of loopholes and back doors that you have to look out for.
You cannot understand the time and place you're in without an understanding of the recent and longer term historical events.
The voter suppression comes out with the difficulty of actually understanding the ballot.
People just don't have the resources to go to voting booths and actually vote.
I think it's very sad that one party seems to be convinced that they can win more if they make it harder to vote.
I don't know what else you could do in the moment, in these last crucial moments, to change the systemic issue, but I think that what we can do is vote.
My participation with NAACP or junior NAACP, we would go into the projects, and it was like public housing, and the majority of the people there, overwhelming majority in New Orleans at the time, they were Black people. And to teach these people how to register, because it was a bunch of forms you had to fill out. It's not like it is one day you just request a form or go out and give your name and you can go ahead and vote. I mean, you had to fill out documents, and the majority of the people this was crazy, so they wouldn't vote.
States like Florida, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Michigan, any of these states are close. It's going to become a fight over these mailed-in ballots that are legitimately cast, but that are arriving late. We don't know what will happen.
I feel like there's a lot of polarization right now between like Republicans and Democrats, and that has kind of led to like people like settling for candidates.
I worry about violence in the streets. I worry about people feeling like the election is illegitimate. Hopefully that doesn't happen, and I don't think it will, but it is the kind of thing that could, we have political disputes where there's no clear winner and the courts making decisions that people don't trust. And that is a situation where our democracy could be in trouble.
And because we're in this two-party system, it really is Trump or Biden. So because Trump is that way, and I personally believe he should not be president again, that is why we support Biden.
So Teens for Biden is essentially a space for students, whether they can vote or not.
We meet about once a week, just kind of in support of the Biden and Harris campaign.
And just realize the fact that even though they may not be able to vote, they are absolutely able and capable of making a change in our country. And because I think young people are the voice that needs to be heard, and it was created for that exact reason.
Young people, especially right now, actually have access to these resources that like younger generations in the past didn't. Like they're able to learn about politics through social media and other forms.
As soon as I could sign up to vote, I started voting. I vote in primary elections. I vote in presidential elections. So I'm voting because that's what I do, and it matters.
To me, the clear option to this is Biden, because he is the Democratic nominee. He has the people behind him who will we have to fight for the soul of our nation.
There's a lot of anxiety. I think there's some fear. I think there's some anger. How could this be happening?
We have become intolerant. We have started dehumanizing the other side. We are at the edge of an abyss, and we better see this and try to step back before it is too late.
If you're political or not, you've been paying attention to this election cycle, because I think people understand what it takes now.
It is still too early to call the race for president, as some key states remain uncalled and millions of ballots are still to be counted.
What happened last time is it looked like Trump was not going to win, and he did. So I was very wary, and I was really wary the night of the election.
We can now project that Donald Trump will win Florida.
If Joe Biden is able to flip Wisconsin, if he's able to flip Michigan, you see the numbers start to change, and then if he is able to flip Pennsylvania, those three alone, again, states Trump only won by a fraction of a point in 2016, those three alone would put Biden over 270.
Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, in Michigan and Arizona, in Nevada, this was incredibly instrumental.
It's a big deal. Can we get those House seats from red to blue? We can, but then if we don't pay attention for the next 2 years, we're going to lose them again like we did this last cycle.
In fact, if you talk to the leaders of those parties, the leaders of those voter protection operations, they will tell you that, yes, we had new voters, but we had voters who had been precluded from participating in 2016.
And we really got the sigh of relief we needed with winning Georgia a few weeks ago. That was unprecedented, unbelievable, and incredible, and so necessary for what we need to do to repair the country.
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden has been elected the 46th president of the United States.
And this is a good day for this country. I'm sorry for the people who lost. For them, it's not a good day. But for a whole lot of people, it's a good day.
I am very relieved that Mr. Biden actually got enough votes to achieve the presidency.
Really, it was this Wednesday that I think we all finally got that collective sigh of relief that we all have been working toward in 2020. So the election of last year to me just means the end of a nightmare.
I think it was just kind of a breath of relief. It was just a moment for our country, or a lot of people in our country, to just kind of like breathe. I feel like we'd kind of been holding our breath for 4 years, and there was just that moment that we finally got to let it out.
This is an attack on our democracy. Outright attack on our democracy.
I was just at school, like following along my Zoom classes, and I was getting Apple notifications on my phone that was saying what was going on, and it was crazy. It was like some woman has died now. Like they found bombs and all these crazy things.
I spent quite a few hours just being sort of shocked, in a state of like, what is happening and what does this mean? It was immediately clear to me that this was momentous. It reminded me of how I felt on 9/11, where I was watching some of this sort of live, and just that shock of historical events are happening.
Trump has been telling us, and his supporters have been telling us for months, that they were going to revolt against something and question something and get violent. I thought about how many people I know that work in that building, and it was terrifying. This is going to change people's lives forever.
I just kept thinking about how lucky we were that it wasn't worse, and also how important elections are, because the day before the Georgia Senate elections had happened, and I was pretty surprised that both Democrats had won, and it looked to me like fairly clearly that Republican turnout had been depressed, probably by Donald Trump's attempts to call into question an election and saying it was rigged. And just thinking about how many races over even the last couple of years were decided by so few votes.
Today, we celebrate the triumph not of a candidate, but of a cause, the cause of democracy. The people, the will of the people has been heard, and the will of the people has been heeded. We've learned again that democracy is precious, democracy is fragile, and at this hour, my friends, democracy has prevailed.
I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear.
I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
Office of President of the United States.
That I will well and faithfully discharge.
That I will well and faithfully discharge.
The duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
The duties of the office upon which I am about to enter.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
It's good that they had additional security at the inauguration, and I could just tell by seeing people's faces that people looked relieved almost that this was finally coming to a close. And there wasn't much bad things that happened at the inauguration, but I did see interviews of people on the streets outside of the Capitol building and just denying that Biden is president now, and they were saying that's not true, even as like the cheers for inauguration were happening. People are still denying it. And I was just hoping that there wouldn't be violence at the inauguration and it would go smoothly and there's a smooth transfer of power.
At a time of pandemics and economic crisis, and a lot of people there's a decline in the trust in the political process. You know, I study voting and I study voter turnout, and one of the first things I remember, when I would teach voting and voting in elections, is the idea of voter fraud. People always brought up voter fraud. I realized that the sort of idea of, well, voter fraud, it happens, but it's not that big of a problem. Even that was overstating the case. And I realized that the Republican Party's commitment to this idea that certain, Democratic electorates are voting fraudulently and that this was expanding and becoming what I think President-elect Biden called a big lie, which I think is true.
If you count the legal votes, I easily win. If you count the illegal votes, they can try to steal the election from us.
This kind of politics is corrosive to democracy. You cannot have a democracy where one party rejects the legitimacy of the other party and refuses to accept election defeats.
We can't also just win these races out of nowhere. Sometimes we have to maintain, right? So we talk about places like Colorado and Arizona and wow, we flipped the state. Wow, it went red to blue, something like that. But if we don't keep investing in those states, they're not going to stay blue.
I think that is an important thing to continue to do, to continue to stay attentive and not become complicit with the presidency just because we have a Democrat in office now.
I hope that this election, if nothing else, was a big wake-up call to people about how politics really work and how it takes all of us working together.
Our democracy is at stake and is going forward, and yet we did survive this, and there's more work to be done to improve the health of our democracy.
Elections really do matter, and that voting rights is second to none in importance. If you don't have access to the ballot, you have access to nothing.
Democracy is worth fighting for in the United States, and it takes us all.
It's so sad to see people hurting. And it's also, I feel like ignorance plays a huge part in this. And if we elect knowledge and if we elect science, then we can slowly change the path to the America that it can be and not the America that it has become right now.
I think that we wanted to make a documentary about voter suppression because voting it's a keystone to democracy, and when individuals and marginalized groups don't have that opportunity to vote that they should have, that democracy just crumbles.
We didn't know what was going to happen, but I think that was the special part about this documentary is that we got to see the impacts of voter suppression over the course of the election.
It also opened my eyes to see how we could fix that too.
I learned the importance of voting and the power that has, and about learning more about what you're voting on.
We need to educate people about voter suppression, and it's a real thing.
I feel like I have a much better understanding of politics and of our world in general. It really kind of opened my eyes.
We were constantly on our toes and just trying to figure out what was going to happen next. So that was a hard part of this project, but at the same time, it is what made this project special, being able to see everything unravel.